Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm here with Riesenmüller's 2018 Roadster and Roadster Mixte. As the name implies, the Roadster is modeled after a road bike or a racing bike. It has a fairly forward riding position, it's light, it's fast. What surprised me during the ride test, however, is it's still a very comfortable bike. It's lively and responsive and perfect for commuting or for longer rides. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the design of the bike, I'll take you through the detailed specs, and I'll take you on a ride test. You can find all the detailed specs, the current pricing, and you can even order online on our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find our contact info, so if you do want to email or call us with any questions that you have, or if you want to set up an appointment to come try it here in Ladysmith or take advantage of our Try at Home program, where we'll bring bikes to you anywhere on Vancouver Island or the Lower Mainland, you can find all of our info at citruscycles.ca. So like all Riesenmüller e-bikes, the Roadster is custom made in Germany. The quality, the attention to detail and engineering that goes into each of their bikes is what you would expect from a German-made bike. It's really evident when you come and try it out. So I've been to their factory and the quality control is exceptional, which explains why their bikes are so reliable. I have here both the regular Roadster, so that's in the striking green, and over here the Roadster Mixte, which has the lower crossbar. As you can see, it's quite a bit lower when you compare it to the regular Roadster, and this one is in white. Both bikes are available in the electric metallic green, which you see, the white, and a black matte. The regular frame, the green one here, comes in 3 different sizes, and the Mixte frame with the lower crossbar comes in 2 different sizes. You can get an optional front rack, so it's up to you. The Mixte doesn't include the front rack, but you can add that to either the Mixte or to the regular version, and you can also optionally add a rear rack to either bike as well. So when Riesenmüller designs a bike, they design it with a vision for its purpose, and then they design the frame and select the ideal components to achieve that purpose. Whereas most companies design with a price in mind, or they start with a regular bike and make it into an electric bike. But Riesenmüller only makes e-bikes, and they build the bike to meet the purpose of that bike, and you can see that design philosophy with the Roadster. So it's really like a classic racing bike. It's a very rigid frame, so it's fast, it's sporty, it's quite light, and has a more forward riding position. So if you take a look at the stem here, you've got a negative angle on that stem to really bring you forward in a more aggressive riding position like you'd normally experience on a road bike or the classic racing bike. When we look at the tires, these are relatively narrow tires. These are actually the Schwalbe G1 all-round RG, and there we go, G1. It's a really very innovative, impressive tire. Of course, it's 28 by 1.5 inches, and we can get the tire pressure anywhere from 45 to 70 psi. And if you read any of the reviews on the Schwalbe G1 all-round, basically everyone agrees these are the tires to have on a bike like this. They're great for pavement and city riding, but the tread design here, it's almost like little tiny knobs, and that tread on gravel is exceptional. In wet, really great. So this is a really good, as the name implies, all-round tire that doesn't compromise in terms of rolling resistance when you're on pavement, but at the same time gives you that control and stability that you need when you do occasionally hit gravel. And even if you don't plan on riding on gravel, if all of your riding is simply on paved roads, these are really good tires for paved roads. But what a lot of people find when they get an e-bike is now they no longer ride the shortest way to work or to wherever they're going. They start exploring maybe the quietest way, the safest way, the more scenic way, because when you have the assistance from the Bosch CX drive here, you're no longer concerned about hills and distances. You're more able to focus on going the way that you want to go. And that's where having these tires is really great, because you may find some really great gravel trails, some nice cycling paths that are maybe a little bit softer material than pavement that in the past you overlooked or ignored because you were on a regular bike. But with the e-bike, all of those options become available to you, so that's really cool. And again, to make sure that you can get to where you're wanting to go, conquer the hills that you need to, they have used a Shimano Deore 10-speed here with a 11:42 tooth cassette, so that gives you really good gear ratio for really climbing hills, but at the same time also traveling really quickly. With the Deore, we do have the Shadow Plus option here. It's a one-way clutch that will tighten up the frame and avoid chain slap on the chainstay and make shifting a little bit crisper. So in addition to being very light, being very lively, being agile, it's a really fast bike. It's one of the fastest bikes I've ridden. You'll notice in the ride test, I just get up to speed really quickly on the bike. But it's also quite comfortable. So we do have a Selle Royale Shadow saddle here with, actually does have a little bit of gel in there, but it's fairly narrow. Again, this style of bike, the vision for this bike, you don't want anything too wide. You're going to end up with chafing problems and it'll impact on your riding position. So it's a really good choice for the saddle. To again look at comfort here, we do have a suspension fork, and the fork does have a through axle here, which helps to make it much stronger and safer, which is really great to see. Now, the suspension fork you can lock out if you wish. You can either have it open or closed, or partly anywhere in between there. There's a little adjuster here. A suspension fork, sometimes on a road bike, the style of bike, you wouldn't put one on because you're concerned maybe with adding to the weight of the bike or losing some energy through the suspension. But on an e-bike, we're not now as concerned about that, so we might as well give you more control over the bike. So even if you don't want the comfort, which is really nice from a suspension fork, it really helps smooth out the ride, helps reduce fatigue on your upper body especially, but it's also a safety thing. If you can, especially if you're commuting, avoid swerving to avoid potholes or other issues with the pavement, if you can ride straight at the same speed very consistently, you're going to be much safer in traffic. And so when you have the suspension fork, you are able to ride more confidently. You're not going to be running the risk of being thrown around by rough pavement like you could without a suspension fork. So I'm really glad they put on there. It does make it more comfortable, but it also helps you maintain steady speed and riding direction in traffic, and keeps you safer. So that's really nice to have as well. We do have these ribbed grips here. Of course, any of the touch points on the bike are easy to change. So if you prefer ergo grips, or you want a different saddle, or change out the pedals, those are easy things to change. We do have kind of a commuter pedal. These are got rubber on them, and you're not going to injure yourself with pins or anything like that. But a lot of people will change these pedals. You may go with some clipless pedals if you'd like to clip in when you ride, or some platform pedals with pins if you do ride in the rain or something like that. And really, it is a very convenient bike to ride every day, including all weather in the rain. So we do have these beautiful fenders here, and they are color matched. They're plastic fenders from SKS, and they're actually color matched to the bike, which is really cool. So this vibrant electric green here, they've got that matched front and rear full length coverage fenders, and the black mat of course comes with black, and the white comes with the white fenders. And I have to call out, these fenders are really well attached to the bike. So we've got them when it comes with the rack. You can see we've got it attached to the rack here in a couple of places. So although they're plastic, they're on really secure. They're not flopping around or wobbling. On the rear here we have two fender stays, and on the front we also, on both bikes, have two fender stays. And a lot of times you'll only see one, and then they kind of get out of alignment and they flop around, and it's really nice that they're secured really well to the fork here, so that they're quiet and they don't flop around. So it's nice having the fenders to keep you dry. Again, some of the convenience things, we do have an integrated kickstand, and that's actually part of the frame design. You can see that there's two bolts here that hold that into the frame. It's not something that's clamped on or added afterwards, so it's nice and secure. Sometimes people have a concern about their bike falling over on the kickstand because it gets wobbly or something like that. This is a really nice design, and we do have an adjustability here on the length of the kickstand as well, should you need to do that. And being at the back of the chainstay here, it's not going to collide with the pedals if you happen to be moving the pedals, so that's nice as well. I mentioned we've got the optional rear rack here and a front rack as well. And this is Racktime compatible, so if you have Racktime accessories you want to use, you can do that. Of course, these are just standard bars here you can put bags on, and we do have the blockers here to prevent the bag from hitting the wheel. When we go with the rack, we do see the rear light here is integrated into the rack. It's got a reflector, and the wiring is run through the rack, which is a really nice secure place to put it. You don't have to worry about the wiring rubbing on the wheel or anything like that, so it's a nice place for that. We do have the front optional rack is here as well. Now this only has a maximum load of 3 kilos, so it's going to be for relatively light things. I think it's a beautiful looking rack with this nice wood here. We've got some bungee cords here to help you secure your load, and it's actually attached in a couple places to the bike here, so it's nice and stable. Of course, it does move as you turn because it is attached to the steering here, so that's something to keep in mind as well, and that's part of the reason why you'd want to keep that load weight down so that it isn't impacting on your steering. Other nice options that they have included with the bike is the frame lock here, or cafe lock, and that uses the same key as the key you would use to remove the battery from the bike. So you simply would put the key in the one side here, and here, I'll grab it and show you. Key in there, turn the key, and on this side, pull down on this lever, and a bar, there we go, comes through the rear wheel and immobilizes the bike, so the bike can't be ridden away. Now, obviously, it can be picked up. That's part of the reason why we call it a cafe lock. Is this is useful if you're going to be keeping your eye on the bike, because somebody can't just ride off with it. They'd actually have to pick it up and put it in a truck. To prevent that from happening, there is a little hole here that we have a chain for that you can put in there, and then you can wrap that around a bike rack or something like that. The neat thing about that solution is the chain doesn't have an additional key or combination. You're using the same key as you were for the frame lock and for the battery as well. Okay, so you can see, you know, we've got a lot of nice integrated accessories with the fenders and the rack and the kickstand and the frame lock. We also have, for your safety, integrated lights. So when we power on the Bosch system here, I can control the lights from my display. There's a protective film on the display right now, so it's a little bit harder to read. I just simply press the light button. It says lights on here. There's a light indicator here, and of course I can come up front and you can see that I've got the light. The neat thing is there is a mounting point for the light on the front rack, so if you don't have the rack, the light mounts up here, and we've got some adjustability here. And what I really like is we've got a side cutout here as well, so you have some side visibility at night. This is the Busch & Mueller IQ XS, which is fairly bright and is running off of the main Bosch battery, so you don't have to worry about charging it. And of course, if you go with the rack here, then they mount it under the rack so that anything you put on top of the rack isn't going to block the light. So that's a nice feature there. We also have a rear light. If you don't have the rear rack, then we have the light integrated into the fender here, which is pretty slick, looks really nice. I really like that. And if you do go with the rack, then they're going to put the light into the rack. So a couple of different options there for the lights. But it is nice that the lights are running off of the main battery, so you don't have to worry about charging them. They're always with you. And if you accidentally leave them on and walk away, eventually the bike will turn itself off and it will turn the lights off as well. But most of the time when you're leaving your bike, you're probably going to remove the Intuvia display because it is removable. And when you take that off, that immediately turns the bike off and also turns the lights off at the same time. Now, speaking of safety, we do have the Magura hydraulic disc brakes here, which is really great to see on an e-bike. You want to have hydraulic brakes so that it's not relying on the strength of your hands to stop the bike, especially on really steep hills or when you're going really fast. There's a fair bit of modulations, so you don't have to worry about locking your brakes up. We actually have adjustability here to adjust the distance between the bars and the levers, so if you have smaller hands or wearing gloves, you can adjust that, which is really nice. Nice large rotors down here to again help you stop. These are 180 millimeter rotors, and really, you know, keeps you safe. You don't have to worry about a cable stretching, wearing out, breaking, rusting. The brakes are self-adjusting and very responsive. The Magura are well-known, really great brakes. And I should mention while we're down here, we do have a quick release, and as I already mentioned, this is a through axle, so you would have to open up the lever, squeeze the end here, and then pull the axle all the way out in order to change the front wheel, and that just really stiffens things up. It is a very stiff, very responsive, very lively bike, very fast, and so they've really done a good job of putting together all of those things to design the bike for the purpose that they had in mind. So I mentioned we have the Bosch CX drive. So this is a mid-drive. A mid-drive compared to a rear hub drive has a lot of benefits. It helps with the balance of the bike because we get the weight in the middle. It gives you a more natural riding experience because when the motor is driving the chain, it's basically like you are a little bit stronger, or if you put it in turbo, a lot stronger, but it's still propelling the bike by the chain, and that's how a bike is normally propelled compared to turning the rear wheel, which kind of gives you a sensation of being pushed along. With the Bosch system and any mid-drive, really, it feels a lot more natural. The other great thing about a mid-drive is that because it's turning the chain, when you change gears, we've got the 10-speed back here, that actually impacts on the motor. So you're leveraging your mechanical advantage of the transmission with the motor to really help you climb up hills. Now, speaking of hills, this is Bosch's top end. This is the Performance Line CX, and that tells you it has the maximum amount of torque. And torque is what you need for climbing hills. A lot of times people ask me about the wattage of motors and compare them. At the end of the day, the wattage really doesn't make a big difference, and those numbers can be easily described in different ways. Let's put it that way. So with the torque is what you need to climb up the hill, and the Bosch CX line has lots and lots of torque. So it's one of the highest torque motors available. That's really going to help you climb up the hills, and when you combine that with choosing an easier gear, we've got really steep hills here in Ladysmith exceeding 30% grade, and especially with a bike this light, I can climb up any of those hills really easily. A couple other advantages of the CX besides the higher torque is there's a higher level of assistance, so you can get up to that top speed more quickly. And if you are on, longer ride, or you're just feeling tired on your way home from work, it does provide you more assistance in the turbo level, so that means you don't have to pedal as hard to get up to a higher speed. Of course, the choice is yours. The CX also is more responsive, so if you stop in the middle of a hill, sometimes people are worried. They think, oh, does this bike have a throttle? I need a throttle. Well, you probably don't really need a throttle unless you completely just don't want to pedal. If that's the case, then this isn't the bike for you, because this is a pedal assist electric bike. You're going to have to pedal and it helps you out. But people sometimes don't realize that with the Bosch system, it's so responsive that as soon as you put some pressure on the pedals, it's going to give you the assistance. So you really can stop in the middle of the hill, get on your bike, start pedaling, and you immediately get the power. There's no delay, whereas with the bike with a speed sensor or cadence sensor is going to take a while to know that you're pedaling. With the Bosch CX, it's super responsive because it does have a torque sensor. That is, it's measuring how much force you're putting on the pedals. It also has a cadence sensor, so it's measuring how fast you're pedaling. And of course, we've got a speed sensor that's measuring your speed. It calculates those 1,000 times per second, so it basically can read your mind. And that means when you come up here to the Intuvia display and adjust your levels of assistance, it knows exactly what you're doing. So right now I've got the assistance set to off. I press the plus on the remote here. That moves it up to Eco. Eco is great for extended range because this gives you 50% of your input power. So however hard you're pedaling, the Bosch system matches that by 50%. And that'll give you on a bike like this With a 500 watt hour power pack, probably 120 to 140 kilometers, possibly even higher. It's such a light bike, very efficient with these narrower tires. You can get tremendous range with that. Most people tend to move it up to Tour, which is the second level of assistance here with the plus over here again. That gives you 120% of your input power. So it's like having a clone of yourself pedaling with you just as hard, in fact, slightly harder. And that on a bike like this will probably give you over 60 kilometers range. Another real benefit of the CX drive is when I press the plus again, here it's going to say Sport, but down here it's going to flash EMTB. That tells you it's a dynamic adaptive mode. EMTB stands for electric mountain bike, and you're thinking, well, this is like a road bike. Why would I want a mountain bike mode? Well, the cool thing about the mountain bike mode is that it's a dynamic adaptive mode. What that means is it adjusts anywhere from the 120% in Tour to the 300% in Turbo automatically, based mostly on your torque, but there's a few other factors that it takes into consideration. So what that means practically is that if you get to a hill, you're going to just start pedaling harder automatically, and the Bosch system is going to sense that and automatically give you the 300% power. Now, nothing's going to change on the display, but you will feel that it's giving you the extra power to get up the hill. When you get to the top of the hill and you start going down or you start going on flat, you're probably going to ease off on the torque and just pedal normally. And when you're pedaling normally, it moves you back down to that Tour level of assistance, the 120%, to help prolong the battery life. So it's a really intelligent system. What I like about it is I would find that I'd get to a hill, because we've got really big hills in Ladysmith, I'd put it on Turbo, I'd get up the hill and I'd forget. And I'd go another 5 or 10 kilometers on Turbo until I realized, wow, you know, why is it so easy? Why am I going so fast? Oh, I left it on Turbo. And the downside of leaving it on Turbo, of course, is that it's going to reduce your battery range. So having that adaptive mode is great, because at the top of the hill, it's going to move me back down and I don't have to worry about manually adjusting them. Now, of course, you can manually adjust it as you wish, but it's entirely up to you. So I mentioned this is the Intuvia display. Bosch does offer something called the Purion display, which is a little bit smaller, has less information on it. With the Intuvia display, you can actually charge a cell phone through the USB port here, which is really handy. The display is also removable, unlike the Purion display, so we can take it off and bring it inside. And the display actually still operates while it's off the bike, which is really cool. And the other great thing about, and by the way, I should mention, if you prefer to secure the Intuvia display to the bike, you can do that. There's a little screw that comes with it that you can put through there and into the back here. But what I love about the Intuvia display is being able to put the Cobi system on here. That's C-O-B-I. Check out the video review of it on our website. That allows you to use your phone as an interface with the bike, and you can control your phone from the remote here without having to touch the screen. That gives you navigation, it gives you fitness, it gives you the ability to make and receive phone calls while you ride, and even to control your music. You can control the volume or skip songs all from the remote here. So that's a really cool feature. The navigation is fantastic, and you can check out the video review of that on their website at citruscycles.ca. Again, it's Cobi, C-O-B-I. So putting the Intuvia display back on the bike here, you can see on the display we've got the current battery level, we've got the current level of assistance. There's a little graph here that lights up to show you how much assistance the bike is providing when you're pedaling, and our current speed. You can see that I've got my lights on. Right now we're looking at the time, but the I button on the display or over here on the remote allows me to cycle through trip computer information. So here you can see my maximum speed, and I can reset that by pressing and holding the reset button. I also can see the average speed, which again I could reset if I wish. And once I do that, it's also going to reset the next value, which is my trip time, so that's back to 0. My range, and this is really cool. Let me see if this battery on the regular Roadster here is charged, using the 2 bars on the other bike. This one also 2 bars. Okay. Well, the cool thing about the range calculator is the Bosch bike knows exactly how much charge is left in your battery, and based on that, and the last few kilometers that you've ridden, it's going to predict your range based on the level of assistance. So if I go up to Eco, it says, look, you know, your battery is pretty low, only 2 bars. Based on what you've been doing so far, you'll still make it another 25 kilometers. If I put it up to Tour, it says, well, now you've only got 12. And if I go to Sport or the EMTB, it's 9. And when I get to Turbo, it's saying you've got about 7 kilometers left. That will dynamically change as I ride. So it's based entirely on your riding and how much is left in the battery. So if I go over to this bike on Eco, it's saying I've got 37 kilometers on it. And so it's still 2 bars. Now it knows more than whether it's 2 bars or not. In fact, with the Kobe system, you can see the exact percentage. And so the Bosch system knows exactly how much power is left. But the reason for the discrepancy is likely that the last person that rode this bike was probably going up some really steep hills and riding more aggressively, and so it's saying, look, based on your riding style and the terrain, on this bike you've only got 25 kilometers left. On this bike, this one was most recently ridden on flat, and so that's going to give us a further range. So that it's really cool. It adjusts as you ride to predict it. It's very reliable, so you can know exactly what your range is. Typically, like I said, on a bike like this on tour, well over 60 kilometers. On Eco, well over 120 kilometers. So you've got quite the range on these. Other stats, you've got the odometer on the bike, your trip distance, and we're back to the clock. So lots of information is available to you on the display, which I really like. And also I really like the fact that I can charge my phone from that. So speaking of range, Riesenmuller is using the Bosch PowerPack 500. So that's a 500 watt hour, 36 volt battery. And the Bosch batteries are really incredible. The great thing about the Bosch system is this is a Bosch standard battery. So it's not a Riesenmuller battery. And what that tells you is that you're going to be able to get a spare or replacement battery many years into the future. For example, previously the PowerPack 400 was the maximum battery capacity that was available, and so when Bosch was able to make a 500 watt hour battery, they purposefully made it backwards compatible and interchangeable. So if you bought a Bosch e-bike 4 years ago and came with a 400 watt hour battery, you can buy the latest 500 watt hour, put it on there, and ride away. And that's a great thing to know about the Bosch system. If you're traveling, you go to Europe, pretty much any bike store is going to have a Bosch PowerPack 500 that you can buy or possibly rent if you're bringing your bike along with you. So it's nice knowing that those batteries are available everywhere. And it is removable from the frame with the key, and it's got a carrying handle, which is great. So if you did want to bring a spare along, it's a nice size to be able to put in a backpack. You can charge it on the bike as well if you wish. There's a charging flap right down here, or you can remove it from the bike and charge it as well. The same charger is used for whether the bike is on the frame or off the bike. The Shimano Steps, for example, has a dongle that you have to use if you're charging it off the bike. And so it's nice that you only have that one charger that's required. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I missed. You can see the wiring is integrated into the frame here, which is nice. You can see they've kind of recessed the PowerPack into the frame here. It really blends well. I think these are beautiful looking bikes. I love the electric green metallic, but I like bikes in bright colors. It helps me to be seen on the road, and anything I can do to be seen helps to keep me safe. The white's really nice, but of course, you know, if you don't want to be so conspicuous, the black mat is nice as well. But it's really nice having all the wiring integrated into the frame, and they've really just thought things through really well. I'm trying to think of any changes that I would make to this bike. Probably, I mean, they used a regular seat post on here, not a suspension seat post, because as a roadster, as a racing bike, as a classic 10-speed kind of look, that wouldn't really fit. But, you know, I like to be comfortable. So if it were my bike, I may be tempted to put a suspension seat post on, given the types of terrain that I'm riding on, but I completely understand why they wouldn't do that, and I'm sure a lot of people will tell me that I'm crazy for wanting to do that. And I'd probably change the pedals a little bit, because I do ride all year in rain, and I'd want something with a little bit of grips there. But otherwise, really, there's nothing else that I can think of that I would change. They really, the geometry is ideal for the purpose that the bike serves. It's nice and light, it's fast, it's agile, it's responsive. I really enjoyed. I was surprised, because this normally isn't kind of the style of bike that I would ride, but I really enjoyed it. It's a great bike, and a really good value for a made in Germany Riesenmuller. It's actually kind of the starting point in terms of pricing for Riesenmuller. So you still get all that quality made in Germany, the design and everything, and it's a really good value.
Well, you notice right away with the Roadster that it's a really light bike. You know, it feels light when you pick it up, but when you're riding it too, it feels light, agile, responsive, and really easy to get up to that 32 kilometers an hour speed. It's also a bit surprising because when you look at it, you know, you look at the pictures on the website, you look at the geometry, and look at it here in the store, you know, and it looks like that classic 10-speed. I remember when I was a kid, you know, my sister had this 10-speed, and wow, that was the bike that just seemed so cool. And so I was kind of expecting that uncomfortable, you know, kind of scrunched up, leaned over, hunched over kind of experience from looking at it. But then you get on it and you ride it, and you know, they've really nailed the geometry because it is still you know, fairly forward. It's not you know, a really upright bike, but at the same time you do actually have really good visibility because I'm not really super hunched over. I'm still, you know, able to see around me in traffic because I'm kind of upright, so I'm forward and upright. It's this really neat combination. Really comfortable, actually. It's, you know, Riesenmueller always does a good job when they envision a bike and the purpose of the bike. They put everything together so that it fits that purpose. And I think with the geometry of the Roadster here, they've done a great job of that. Moved it up to the e-mountain bike mode there for that hill. No problem climbing the hill, of course, with this Bosch CX, and especially with such a light bike. I'm gonna have no problems on any of the hills, but I'll do some tests. Right now we're heading into some gravel and broken pavement, some potholes. Be a good opportunity to test out the suspension fork. And it is nice to have a suspension fork, even if your primary purpose is urban riding, which is, you know, really what the bike is designed for. But a lot of times you do end up, you know, with some broken pavement like this, and the suspension fork is definitely helping to smooth things out. It's nice because this is, you know, it is actually really rough, both the pavement itself and all the holes and potholes. You know, but I'm not hearing any rattling or anything from the fenders, which often happens. And definitely the suspension fork does help. So now we're getting to some gravel. And that's one of the things that the tires are really good at, these Schwalbe G1s. You know, they're great on pavement, obviously. They're good in wet conditions as well. And in gravel like this, you know, I'm swerving, missed some potholes. I don't have to because I've got the front suspension, but you know, just I wanted to see what these tires would be like. And there's no problem, there's no sign of slippage. I feel really confident on this bike in loose gravel. Now, I tend to ride a lot of, you know, I ride the D-Lite from Riesenmueller, which is a full suspension bike. So I think one thing, if this were my bike, and I do really like it, it's not typically my style of bike, but I actually really like it. It's a lot of fun. I think I might be inclined to put a suspension seat post on myself. But, you know, I understand from a design approach why they didn't. This is the type of bike where you want to feel connected to the road and very efficient, very fast. And so they put a rigid seat on, but you could change it to a suspension seat post. I think I like the saddle. It's pretty good, but you know, I've grown really used to some of the saddles that Riesenmueller's using, either on their mountain bikes like Ergon, or some of the Selle Royale kind of gel comfort saddles. But yeah, going through, you know, the broken pavement, gravel like that, the bike handled really well. The handling is nice. You know, I like these flat bars. Again, these are just ribbed grips. So, you know, if you're doing touring on this bike, for example, which is certainly a possibility, then you know you might want to change to some flatter grips, but for what this bike is intended for, this style of grips works really well. Go through a tunnel here, which will probably lose the GPS signal. Got a really massive hill afterwards. Well, not too long, just very steep. So oh, there's the light. It's the IQ-S. It's not quite as bright as the IQ-E, a little bit smaller, but it's still very bright. Again, you know, this bike isn't designed for going, you know, really trail riding, mountain biking at night, but in an urban area or even, you know, rural trails, it's going to give you enough light. So because the bike has the EMTB mode, I could just leave it there, and then as I pedal harder to get up the hill, it'll automatically move it into turbo for me. But if I don't want to actually have to pedal that hard so the bike knows I want the assistance, I can just press the plus there, boost it up into turbo, down into my easiest gear, first gear out of the 10. Got a visual indicator, here are the bars, which is really handy. And wow, actually feels no problem on this bike. I think, you know, I was worried with 10 speeds would it be enough. It's still got a good big climbing cog on the back. I don't even need to go down to 1 on this hill on this bike. I think partly because it's so lightweight, it just really flies up that hill. Wow, that was fun. See, that's the danger with testing all these bikes, is some of them I just fall in love with, and I've got perfectly good bikes, and it's hard to just have one, you know? And this would make a really nice addition. Check out the gear ratio. I'm exceeding 41. I'm not sure what the GPS will show. 42, 45. And you know, I'm still able to pedal and provide some input. 46, 47. I don't feel like my legs are spinning too fast. So I think it's a good gear ratio. I was able to climb the steeper hill without a problem in my lowest gear, and in my highest gear I'm still able to pedal probably past 50 going down a hill and still provide some input. Of course, the motor stops assisting at 32 kilometers per hour as required by law here in Canada. It's nice though, the Bosch system does kind of ease you off of that, so it's not an abrupt change. And again, it's great having the CX drive because it does give you that much more torque for climbing the hills. Kind of fun because you really can't lean over very far forward. Probably why you're seeing the ground there. Change the camera angle. There we go. If you want to be aerodynamic and fly down the hills, you can do that. And at the same time, you can pop back up and have a lot of visibility in the traffic. Okay, so I'm going to cut the camera here. We've just got some traffic lights and stuff ahead, and I'll come back on the cycling path. Got the Shimano Deore 10-speed, and it is shifting really well. Of course, it's nice having the Bosch shift detection, and you know, it's a really very responsive bike. You really feel that direct power as soon as you start pedaling hard. You get that increase of assistance, especially if you're on the e-mountain bike mode. It just feels like a really efficient bike. So we're going to head onto a gravel trail, test out these Schwalbe G1 tires. And we'll hit the grass here as well. And they handle really well. So I have the optional rack on this bike, which I really like to have. It's handy for bringing stuff, camera gear and stuff for videos, but if you're heading to work or just out on a tour, it's really nice having the ability to bring stuff with you. You can also get a front rack as well. The back rack's perhaps more practical if you've got pannier bags and things like that. I've seen some people get the front rack for small dogs. I don't think I've ever seen anyone with a small cat on their front rack, but I suppose you never know. Another steep hill, and again, no problem with this Bosch CX. Flies right over it. The fenders are working, even though it's dry. What they're doing is they're actually keeping the stones from hitting the frame or my feet or my face. That is one of the things when you get, you know, a gravel tire that's designed to keep you safe in gravel, give you a lot of traction and control. Because it's gripping and grabbing the tires or the gravel, it's possible that it'll throw up some stones every now and then. So it is really nice on a bike like this having the full coverage fenders. Not just for when it's wet and raining and you're riding through mud and puddles, but also when it's dry on a path like this where there's a lot of loose stones. You'll probably actually hear them making a kind of a zipping noise as they hit the fenders. Okay, let's do a brake test up here. No problem stopping quickly. Was able to lock up my back tire there a little bit. Do it again. Yeah, great stopping capability. You know, I love these Magura brakes. Lots of modulation in them. You can adjust the levers. And the tires do a great job of just grabbing right in. So if this is your commute, or this is what you do on weekends, this kind of hard pack gravel, I'm purposely swaying back and forth here, by the way, to test out the tires, see if I can get them to lose traction at all, slip at all. Nothing, they're just gripping right in. Obviously that probably isn't what your commute is like, swerving like that, but it's good to know, you know, how is the bike going to respond in a worst case scenario? Because it's one thing for it to perform really well on average, but it's those, you know, very rare occasions when you need to stop quickly or quickly dodge, in this case, a rabbit. Might run out on the trail in front of us, but if you're in city traffic or whatever, you need to get out of the way, or, you know, miss a pothole or whatever it is. It's nice having that confidence that the bike is not going to come out from under you. And certainly I'm feeling very confident in this bike and these tires. Everything works together really well. Now it looks like I forgot to install the bell on this bike. I'll have to do that when I get back to the shop. I'm really actually having a lot of fun. Like I said, this isn't necessarily the style of bike I would normally choose. You know, when I first saw the Roadster, I thought, oh, you know, not really sure that I would enjoy that. I don't know how many of our customers will love it. Now that I'm riding it, it's fantastic. I really enjoy it. You can go really fast. It's lively. It's agile. It's still comfortable. take that stick, no problem. Of course, again, the kinds of things I do on the video perhaps are not the things you should be trying at home. But if you do have to run over a stick, well, you know that you can. Do have a good degree of puncture resistance in the tires here. Yeah, so bike's performing really well on this gravel, so it's nice to know that if your commute involves some trails, rail trails, you know, if you're out on the Goose and want to keep going to Souk or something, then you're not going to run into problems. This is a relatively steep hill, a little loose stuff here as well, and really no problems coming down. Feel a lot of confidence on it. Now obviously with these narrower tires, it's a lower volume of air, so the tires aren't giving you as much cushion as you would get on bikes with you know, more air volume in them. So when I get onto mud like this, and roots and rocks and sticks, it's actually not bad. You know, on the mud, I'm gripping no problem. The bumps here, the suspension is helping definitely, but if that was most of what you're riding on trails like that, then at that point, you know, you do want to look at a different bike for comfort, something at least with the suspension seat post and possibly wider tires. But for this is great. Now here, this is actually a really steep hill. At the end, it's the steepest. This has got to be the easiest bike I've ridden up that hill. Like, I'm not even having to work at it. And I think again it's because it's so efficient. It's a lightweight, got these narrow tires. That was amazing. I've never, you know, gone up that hill without having to work that hard at all. That was great. So now I'm on a bit of, you know, what you could consider a bit of a mountain biking trail. Again, lots of roots and rocks, really bumpy, lots of mud, and yet I'm surprised. I thought it would be a lot harder to handle the bike when you get into this stuff, because of course the narrower tires, I've got the pressure fairly low, and definitely the suspension fork is helping, because a lot of times you're going to start feeling thrown around and off balance and just relatively unsafe, and I'm not feeling any of those things even through this mud. Wow, these are very impressive tires in the mud. Just you know, glided right through there. Didn't feel my back end grabbing at all around that, you know, kind of cornering here through the mud. A lot of times what you'll feel is your back end kicking out a bit, purposely riding through the mud. And no, not feeling it all, so that's great. It's going to perform really well in wet conditions. Now again, if you are planning on mountain biking all the time, well, you know, get something closer to mountain bike than a road kind of commuting bike like this, but this is kind of what you want to do every now and then on the weekends. As you can see, it's handling it just fine. It is handy having those fenders going through the mud there. Let me head back up to the trail. Ends the mountain biking portion of our video test ride. back onto the trail. And this is where I love this bike is, you know, you can just hammer the pedals and boom! You're going fast. Nice and fast. And yet, feeling safe and confident in that, absorbing some of the bumps. Woohoo! Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Oh, and I was on tour. Huh. Wow. Yeah, so the Roadster is one of those bikes that surprised me. And I try not to do it, but you know, we all have preconceived ideas of what a bike's going to be like. Kind of rule it out. It's definitely worth coming and trying it. This has been way more fun than I expected. More comfortable than I expected. Really sporty. You can ride aggressively, you can ride fast, but at the same time, you can just kind of slow down and relax and enjoy and not feel like you're too far forward. If you want to be, you can. Yeah, it's a really fun bike, a great value for the price. You know, Riesenmuller bikes are definitely worth the price. I know sometimes people wonder, okay, you know, they seem to be a little bit on the higher end of the price scale, but then you look at the actual quality of the components they're using, and it makes sense why they're that price. And then you come and you ride it, and then it really makes sense because nothing else compares to just how well they ride and how well put together the bike is and the design is. So if you have any questions, you want to come try it yourself, you can head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. As I'm heading home here, I just realized that you know, sometimes on a Bosch powered bike, maybe a mountain bike that's a little bit heavier, when you hit that 32 and the assistant cuts out, sometimes you feel like it's just too much work to keep going. It's not the case on this bike. Wow, I feel like it's totally worth, you know, giving that, because you don't feel that. I didn't even notice the cutoff there after the 32 kilometers an hour. You know, you can really cruise with this bike, hitting 40. Probably get up to 45 here if I pedal a little bit harder. There we go. Woo! And it rewards you with that work. Really, you know, sometimes people tease me and say I'm cheating, but you know, you can't cheat fun. And this is a lot of fun. But I'm also getting a good workout. So I was spinning there. So anyways, yeah, it's a great little bike. Definitely worth coming and trying it. If you have any questions, reach out to me on our website at citruscycles.ca.